Hello and welcome to a new video, or should I say still image, where I'm just going to talk about stuff that doesn't matter because I have nothing better to do. Today I'm going to be talking about the upcoming Spacejam sequel that, according to IMDb, is going to be coming out in 2021. I'm not entirely sure how accurate that is, but IMDb tends to have the most information about this stuff. So just to put on the table now, Spacejam 1, nostalgia aside, was kind of a crappy movie. It couldn't even be said to be a good Looney Tunes movie, or even a good sports movie for that matter. And one of the big problems with it was it didn't really exist to be its own movie. It was ultimately just one giant ad for Nike. There's been commercials with the Looney Tunes for Nike products before, and they decided to take that concept and turn it into a feature-length film. And even in this preview image, you can see Nike's logo, plain as day. It was very, very deliberately put there. So yeah. But Spacejam 2 is kind of in an interesting place because it doesn't really exist to be a Nike ad at this point. Like, yes, there still are Nike and Looney Tunes crossovers and cross-promotion. I think Nike a few years ago released like a variant of shoes themed after Marvin the Martian. But this film seems to be being made more because so many people remember Spacejam 1 and they're trying to cash in on that nostalgia. Now, all things considered, trying to chase after childhood memories isn't a very high caliber foundation for the creation of a new film. It doesn't exactly spell out or scream inspired or anything like that, but it is at least a little better than being a literal ad. One design philosophy I've heard that works really well with trying to reimagine or reboot or make a sequel to something people remember from way back when is you want to make your addition to it based more on what people remember about the thing, more so than what the thing was actually like. For example, Mad Max Fury Road really, cashed in on the aesthetic of Mad Max, the chases and vehicles, the post-apocalyptic setting, the explosions, really 80s metal stuff going on. But if you look at the first Mad Max, it wouldn't even be recognizably a Mad Max film. It wasn't until the sequel that we started to get the post-apocalyptic stuff, and even then, that film was a lot slower than what Fury Road was like. But Fury Road ended up being a good movie and was well received by audiences and critics. So it was a good move to make. Now, Spacejam rides completely on nostalgia. So what would they, if they decide to use this design philosophy, try to emphasize? Well, one of the first things that come to mind is likely Lola Bunny, who was introduced in Spacejam and became sort of part of the main cast of Looney Tunes, at least in like the Looney Tunes show, where she had a much bigger role and a new design and a new personality. I've seen people argue that in order to make her especially optimal, they should use her Space Jam design and give her the personality from the Looney Tunes show. I just hope they, give her a better personality than the, very generic tough girl, you go girl shit from Space Jam. I mean, worst case scenario, they in 2019, you can imagine it. They try to make like a part of the plot where the other Looney Tunes don't let Lola play or don't want her to play because she's a girl and she has to like show those men who's boss. And you might be thinking, well, they needed her specifically in the first film. She's the one who taught them how to play basketball, but well, real shitty fucking writers and directors are capable of completely ignoring the precedent set by previous movies. Just ask Rian Johnson. But again, that is a worst case scenario, and I have no reason to think that T. Nance or C. Colger are going to go down that route, but it seems that where they are going down at least is keeping her own old design, since the etching in T. Nance's locker there has more what she was in Space Jam than what she was in the Looney Tunes show. Now, we haven't actually seen her proper in any media. This picture here is pretty much the only freaking image for Space Jam 2 we've got. But it is, the one thing we have to go by, so it's where most of the assumptions are going to come from. In general, one of the issues I have with the concept of a Space Jam sequel is that all you're going to do is have the same sort of premise or stuff like that as the first film. It's going to be the Looney Tunes playing basketball again. You compare Space Jam to Looney Tunes Back in Action, those are two completely different films, even if they do share a lot of general quality and design choices, like having the Looney Tunes interact with real actors. But Space Jam was a sports film, and Looney Tunes Back in Action was a spy thriller. And I think that fits the whole idea of these characters being able to take on different roles or be in different scenarios a lot better. What's Space Jam 2 gonna be? The Looney Tunes playing basketball. And if they make a third film, assuming this movie does well, it's actually good and it makes a lot of money, then it's either going to be the Looney Tunes playing basketball, or maybe they'll branch out into a different sport, but it would still be a sports movie. There's just not a lot of wiggle room in terms of being able to come up with a new interesting story and stuff like that if it's going to be the same thing over and over. The addition of LeBron James, I can't really say I have much of an opinion of it. He's like the biggest name in basketball, and I would know that because I don't know diddly dick about basketball, but I know who LeBron James is. So if you can penetrate that, bubble of ignorance, and, well, I guess it's true, he is the biggest name in basketball. I've heard people mention that he's actually a good comedian in his own right. He's been in comedy films before and was able to stand out among the crowd as being especially funny. I haven't seen any movies with LeBron James in them, or I at least don't remember them if I have, so I can't really give my own opinion on it. But I do hope, there's always that, I do hope that he is a good addition to the movie. And I also hope that the movie doesn't just orbit LeBron James all the time, but is able to give the Looney Tunes more of their own moments, because Space Jam really felt more like a Michael Jordan film with the Looney Tunes in it rather than a Looney Tunes film with Michael Jordan in it. Looney Tunes Back in Action was a lot better at making the cartoons stand out amongst the real actors. So having enough scenes with just the Looney Tunes and their characters, or having good scenes where the Looney Tunes are at their prime when interacting with LeBron James, it would make the movie a lot better than it otherwise could be. Now, as far as who's going to be in the movie, who's going to be emphasized, well, we see, a few clues here. Obviously, Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck are going to be in the movie. That's, a no-brainer, and they're represented in this preview image, too. But the thing is, not every Looney Tunes member can be given a huge scene or big role. Like in the first Space Jam, Marvin the Martian had only one comedic scene where he shot his laser gun to announce, I think it was halftime, and he ended up shooting it through Daffy Duck. And other than that, he didn't really have a role or anything to really have him stand out. So it is kind of interesting that out of all the characters they could have drawn on these lockers here, Marvin the Martian is one of them. Though it could also be that LeBron James' favorite Looney Tunes is Marvin the Martian, and he wanted that character on his locker, which, if that's the case, and at least I know the guy has good taste. Tweety is also on it, and hidden behind clever political commentary on Trump's wall idea. Nah, just kid, it's just Tweety, but for whatever reason he is behind a wall. Not really sure why, but alright. I'm kind of expecting it to be like the same team as in the first movie. So it was like Sylvester, Tweety, Bugs, Daffy, Lola, and I think Taz might have been in it, if I recall correctly. Yeah, I could be wrong about that. But if they do shuffle up the team, maybe have Yosemite Sam or Elmer Fudd in it, that would be pretty cool. It could even be that, maybe it's not these other alien cartoons that are initiating the game, but the villains of Looney Tunes. So it'd be a team of, Marvin the Martian, Yosemite Sam, Elmer Fudd, Coyote, and, and maybe Sylvester. He's sort of painted as a villain in all the cartoons he's in, unless he's with Porky Pig. But if they do bring back the villains from the first movie, then I hope they have a better explanation for why they even need this basketball game. One of the many criticisms Chuck Jones had about Space Jam was that Bugs Bunny needing to assemble a team of Looney Tunes to play a game against these aliens and get Michael Jordan to help them out is just ludicrous, considering what Bugs Bunny is able to do in the cartoons. Chuck Jones argued that Bugs Bunny should have been able to solve it himself in a matter of minutes, which I would be inclined to agree, because no matter how big or strong those aliens got, Bugs Bunny has faced against villains of that caliber before. One idea I came up with myself is maybe it can be established that these aliens come from a different cartoon universe, and in that universe, the logic of it is completely different than what's in Looney Tunes and is able to counter Looney Tunes logic. So Bugs Bunny can't disguise himself and nobody will know who he is. They'll instantly see past it. Bugs Bunny can't drop an anvil on them because slapstick doesn't work against them. And so maybe in that scenario, Bugs Bunny then has to try to cleverly get them to agree to something that isn't based strictly on Looney Tunes logic, such as a basketball game. And that's why Bugs Bunny is playing basketball and not disguising himself as a woman and subtly sticking dynamite down their throats. One of the things I do remember from the first Space Jam that I liked was the occasional scene where it cuts to the crowd and them reacting to what was going on in the game. And if you pause it, you're able to spot all these different Looney Tunes characters who are recognizable but aren't part of the main cast. So it's, nice to see them at least appear in the movie even if they don't have a role or any individual scenes. And not only would I hope that Space Jam 2 does something like this, but I think it would actually be really freaking cool if they included some of the additions to Looney Tunes that have come out since Space Jam. Characters who have, started out from Duck Dodgers or the Looney Tunes show or even Wabbit. It's hard to come up with a new character for a franchise that has been around as long as Looney Tunes, because people are going to want to see the old stuff, the old characters a lot more, but there have been additions that have received a lot of positive feedback and are still, have their own little fandoms today that have appeared in these spin-offs, and it would just be nice to, see them acknowledged, that they haven't been completely forgotten. One question is, why are they deciding to make it now? The film came out in 1996, and according to IMDb, it'll be released in 2021, which would be its, 15th anniversary of the first film. But the question is, do they have anything else planned around it to help build up hype? There are those new Looney Tunes cartoons being made, literally called Looney Tunes cartoons. That's the name of that particular spin-off. But those are being released in the year prior, and even a little bit in this year. I know that the spin-off Duck Dodgers was made as a sort of addition to Looney Tunes Back in Action, but I'm doubtful if there will be a spin-off series that will coincide with Space Jam, since they're already putting a bunch of time and money into these 1,000 minutes of shorts. Anyways, those are just my brief thoughts about it. I don't really have much else to say, but then again, there isn't much else to talk about considering how little is known about it at the moment. So when more information comes out, we might be able to make a more informed assumption or a series of guesses as to whether or not this might actually end up being a good movie or if it will end up being shit. But until that day comes, I hope you enjoyed the video, that I gave you something to think about and otherwise entertained you. Take care.